Hello everyone, welcome to a new video for Bitcoin price prediction based on the Elliott Wave analysis. This is the indicators analysis. We're gonna see the indicators, how it aligns with our Elliott Wave, and of course we're gonna start with the micro level first analysis for Bitcoin for the 1 hour chart. As you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the leading diagonal here, which it might form, of course, a wave 1 or a wave A, followed by a correction here as a W, X, and a Y, where we see, of course, something very corrective here. We have already from there a potential wave A, a B, and a C, finished a W. We have an X given in 3 waves and finalizing also with 3 waves, and a wave Y to finish a wave 2 or a wave B. After this, we start to see a signal of strength from our perfect box here for a wave 2, 0.618, and the 0.786 for a potential 1, 2 here, and looking, of course, toward the upside for a wave C or a wave 3, meaning you can still be, of course, in an ABC to take the high here, 99K potentially, can still very likely as well. Now, basically, since we have an impulse here on the 15-minute chart, we have already, of course, a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. We have a wave 1 or a wave A as well, and followed by a deep correction here. Now, if we want to count this as an impulse, it can be very likely, of course, after a sideways correction here as a wave 2, you see continuation for higher prices, and we see, of course, an impulse that it is unfolding over there. However, I would like to mention as well that you gotta be careful also from a longer triangle here as a potential A, B, C, D, and E, but very unlikely, especially, of course, after this very sideways. So I would say that this can be, of course, a far possibility. I see, of course, a finished 1, 2 here and a potential 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5 to unfold, of course, towards the upside. However, be careful from the ABC, therefore, it can be the wave C unfolding towards the $91K $730 here for Bitcoin, in case that something is gonna show up as a weakness again to drop down for Bitcoin. Yep, so these are basically now the insights for Bitcoin. I see, of course, higher prices to unfold, and I see, of course, the 91K 700 might be a target. And of course, if broken, we might be here in a wave 3, and of course, we surpass the wave C 4 and a 5, and it might be, of course, the wave 5 hitting the 99K here as a huge ABC recovery. And don't forget that within this invalidation of this impulse 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5, of course, it's not allowed anymore when you take, of course, the invalidation. That means, of course, all this push toward the downside is right now, of course, a zigzag where you have an A, B, and a C. Your wave C is a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. And then, of course, pushing here for a wave 2 in diagonal. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. Of course, continuation of the same bear market that we started within this impulse, but simply in a different pattern, different psychology. Rather than an aggressive impulse, it's going to transform to an ending diagonal 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. Great. So let's see, of course, on the 1 hour chart here, the MACD and the RSI, and also, of course, the other indicators. So for the RSI on the 1 hour chart, of course, we have here kind of like a divergence for the bullish that it has started already from there. We can see, of course, this divergence where we have, of course, this lower low, and we have higher highs with the RSI pushing, of course, our impulse here toward the upside, and we see still, of course, continuation of this divergence for higher prices currently. However, be careful, of course, because we have started to see some divergence for the bearish as well, taken from these highs, and of course these highs on the RSI, they are forming a bearish divergence. So it might be, of course, broken, and it might continue for higher prices, but yeah, you gotta be careful. There is some resistance over there. Don't forget that if you are in an impulse, so definitely you want to continue, of course, for higher prices, and that the RSI, of course, has to go inside the overbought area, at least on the 1 hour chart. On the 4 hours chart, we can see also that we have a kind of like not really divergence as bullish, because I would say like these are both higher highs here, and starting from this area as well, where we have started our leading diagonal. Yeah, so the leading diagonal wave A or wave 1. So we start to see a like divergences from there for the bullish, and we can see of course continuation without taking the low here, which is interesting. But yeah, very interesting, because of course we might be in this formation of an ABC recovery here, at least to reach of course the 99k, potentially of course within this target. Now we can see also the RSI on the 4-hour chart is above the center line, which is very nice signal. I would say it's a strength for Bitcoin. We see of course a push toward the upside within the price today, so we might continue of course as well for higher prices. And yeah, so it looks really good on the 4-hour chart. I would say nothing yet is looking very bearish here. Now of course we have kind of like no convergence or diversion. It's a convergence, I would say, not divergence, which is can be of course an exhaustion sometimes, but it can continue of course toward the upside after getting some slight correction. Yeah, so this is what happened after exhaustions and of course the convergences. So on the daily as well for RSI, and we can see clearly after taking the low here, normally what this is exactly what Bitcoin always do after taking the oversold area. On the daily we start to see of course something pushing for higher. Now it can be the 1 2 3 4 5 as we mentioned, or it can be simple ABC. Currently, you would like to see, of course, the RSI line here, taking, of course, the center line and breaking it above. Once we do this, well, you can consider the wave 3. So if the line here will break the center and will continue to push for higher, definitely we are, of course, in a wave 3 toward the upside. And that means, of course, it's a strong recovery here. For Bitcoin, we can see already, of course, our signals on the RSI as well for the bullish. Yep, so for the weekly here, let me turn off this. So for the weekly as well, okay, we are very close for the oversold area, but we didn't touch it yet, of course. But a very interesting signal is a bullish divergence again. Lower lows on the RSI, higher lows on the price action, creating a very strong divergence, I would say, for the weekly. It's a good signal, of course, for the bulls there. If the things continue, of course, on the lower time frame, meaning if we continue on the daily 4-hour chart and 1-hour chart, the weekly might be playing very strongly here, of course, for something for higher. Yeah, and don't forget, of course, our scenario in the deep analysis yesterday. Please go back for it, where you are also potentially in a 1 2 3 4, and your wave 5 might still be unfolding as an ending diagonal, and this might be the wave 5 of this ending diagonal. Yep, so this is regarding the RSI. Let's move for the MACD. So for the MACD, we can see clearly also that the momentum of the bears here is, of course, decreasing from the previous movement, of course, where we see, of course, a weakness for the bears and a strength for the bulls. We see also the MACD line and the signal line are in a cross, a bullish cross here, even above the center line. This is a very strong signal actually for the MACD as well for the bulls on the 1-hour chart, meaning of course that it might continue toward the upside here, and we might see of course a strong momentum as well for the bulls very soon. If we move to the 4-hour chart, very interesting as well. We can see, of course, the MACD and the signal line are above the center, which is very good first signal. The second thing, they are still open, of course, for higher. The momentum is increasing again, of course, getting in a green here rather than, of course, in light green. We see, of course, the momentum started to increase again, and it might continue, of course, towards the upside. We can see, of course, this also direction of the MACD is still, of course, strong toward the upside. For the daily, even much more stronger signal. We have a very decreased signal here for the momentum for the bears. Is this when you see, of course, just a few candles for a momentum for the red here and followed by something very strong as the green? That means, of course, it's a very strong signal, especially if you have the bullish cross over there. So that means, of course, yes, it is increasing so much here, the bullish momentum, rather than, of course, the bears. And especially when you have like a very light momentum for the bears, and of course we start to see the green pushing for higher, and as per our Elliott wave, definitely we are in ABC at least, or we are of course in a 1 2 3 4 and a 5 continuation towards the upside. So this is a confirmation as well from the indicators here. Is very nice as well. On the weekly, we can see, of course, yes, after a very strong trend here, and of course, the bear cross that we see, of course, for the MACD and the signal line, we see the momentum has started to move or shift, of course, for the light color, which is, of course, signaling a decrease in the momentum. We might see, of course, a decrease there. We can see, of course, that the signal and the MACD lines might, of course, start to curve here while we push for higher. Yeah, so it can be, of course, very likely that we don't continue there. We might, of course, take the high simply and then push down. And this is what it might happen also on the weekly here. You might not take the center line again or above it. In case it happens, this is ultimate bullish, but I doubt it, of course. We're still, of course, estimating the ending diagonal here, 1 2 3 4 5. So I expect, of course, here the MACD and the signal line might, of course, meet together below the center line. It might play as a resistance, and of course we might drop down again after all. So this is regarding the RSI and the MACD. They show both, of course, a very strong signals for our scenario, and they are aligning perfectly with our analysis here on the 1 hour chart, where we are expecting, of course, something to continue for higher, at least after this ABC leading diagonal toward the upside, guys. Let's move for the KGT here. For the KGT, we are looking also on the 5-minute chart here. Very interesting signal, which is invalidation of the bearish. We can see, of course, the bearish signal given there higher than the previous one. Of course, it's gonna be there, but what is very interesting that it is, of course, here invalidated. Yeah, so even if we push for lower, it's not a very strong signal. It will not take the low. It means, of course, it might be something corrective. It can be an ABCD probably, but it might be very easily broken as well. If we move even for the lower time frame here on the 1 hour chart, we can see, of course, the bullish signals are playing very nicely and pushing the price toward higher prices. Now, of course, one signal here as bearish has been played, but it has been played weakly, and of course we can see how much weak it was. It was simply corrective and sideways, followed by a double. This is your signal, a double bullish signals. When you see double, because as you can see, it's bullish, bearish, and followed by double bullish signals. And look what happened after it. And this is exactly what we would like to see. Of course, a very strong push towards the upside, and of course the signal is higher from here. It is already invalidated. Nothing is bearish. Even if we push a little bit lower, this is gonna be corrective. A new bullish signal might appear, and once it appears again, of course, we're gonna continue the trend toward the upside. So very interesting and very strong signal of for buy here for Bitcoin. So the market, I would say, is recovering at least in a large ABC zigzag, as you mentioned, as per Elliott Wave. The last thing I would like to show here is the volume. Of course, for the volume on the 1 hour chart, we can see exactly the highest amount of volume has been given in this drop here. However, you got a low, and what is interesting, within this low, you got even a lower volume, which is very, very interesting. Once you get this, like a new low with a lower volume, you are expecting, of course, something to be very bullish toward the upside, and this is exactly what we got. Now we got, of course, another volume here, which is higher, right? With higher prices, we got a lower volume. So nothing is bearish, honestly. It's simply corrective, that because, of course, the volume is even lower than before, and you got higher prices with it. So it's a huge, I would say, divergence here, if you want. And it is very interesting, of course, that we are looking for this right now, and we see, of course, higher prices unfolding, another lower volume as well, and continuation breaking the high here, and continuation toward the upside. So I would say it's a very nice, strong signal from the volume as well on the 4 hour chart. We can see as well the volume is decreasing here while we were moving toward the downside. We couldn't finish a nice correction, by the way. It's a very messy ugly correction. It is a WXNY after, of course, this leading diagonal, and here we're pushing for higher after, of course, the volume is reducing right now. Of course, this I'm expecting higher volume again, but this time the higher volume is gonna be for higher prices. So this is what I'm expecting again, and of course signaling something very bullish, at least in an ABC, guys. Of course, as I mentioned, 97k can be 99k as well. We'll see, of course, how it's going to unfold on the daily as well. We can see anyway the volume has finished exactly in this low, and we see, of course, the highest amount of volume over there. Now we were expecting, of course, a 4 and a 5. Maybe it's gonna be a 4 and a 5, but yeah, the time required, of course, for this wave 4 is done, guys. So I don't see a wave 4. I see, at least if we are continuing here, it can be, of course, the diagonal scenario, meaning, of course, you start with a very high volume here with a wave 1, then you get a wave 2, and then you get a high volume, but lower than before for the wave 3. And then, of course, we push even lower with even less volume. So this is what I'm expecting for later on, a less volume for the wave 3, for the wave 5. Once we get this, in case that we get this diagonal with the volume, and we finish, of course, the ending diagonal, this is our signal. We finished, of course, the correction, the bear market, and we push for a new bull run, guys, for Bitcoin over there. Yep, so these are the indicators analysis. I see, of course, a lot of bullish momentum, a lot of bullish strengths. I'm expecting a very strong recovery for the crypto market and for Bitcoin, of course. And we'll see how this is going to unfold based, of course, on our Elliott Wave analysis, and of course that the indicator aligns perfectly with it. That was it for Bitcoin. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your likes and comments. See you in the next one. Bye bye.